welcome your host, Director Global Communications, Christopher Barber.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are y'all doing? Did we enjoy lunch? Yeah? I had a slider and some of that famous Southern mac and cheese, and I am feeling ready to go. Before we dive in, a little bit of housekeeping and a reminder. I'm sure you guys have heard this more than a few times already. If you've got questions, you can enter them directly in the app. Simply go to this session, look for the part that says live Q&A, and you can submit your questions to me, to the other panelists. Anything we're talking about is fair game. It's anonymous, so you don't have to feel like you can't ask a silly question. There are no silly questions. We love all the questions. So we'll make some time at the end to answer those. Feel free to enter them. And now for the topic of the day. At Booking.com, we love data. If that wasn't already abundantly clear, it will be after today's session. We look at it to inform everything we do at Booking.com, whether we're developing new products for our consumers, for our partners. We run tons of research. We send out surveys, which I'm sure all of you have seen, a number of them. And we use that to inform everything we do, especially at moments in time like right now, where everything is changing in travel. The past 2 years of the pandemic have been, for lack of a better word, truly unprecedented. What travelers were interested in, what was top of mind for them, what they needed prior to the pandemic was very different than what it was in 2020 and also in 2021, and even looking forward to this year. So we're going to dive into that. What is top of mind for travelers? What do they want and need? How are we getting those insights from them? And how are we translating that into the next innovations in our product? So, to do all of that, please join me in welcoming to the stage our two fabulous speakers, Molly Stevens, Senior Director of User Experience, and Serdar Akin, Senior Director of Product.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
That's our pleasure. So, before we kick off, maybe it's nice to give people a bit of a flavor about what it is you do at Booking.com. I imagine people hear user experience, but what does that actually mean, Molly?
Yeah, so the user experience team is a collection of designers, researchers, and writers who look after everything that our customers see and experience when they use our products and services, as well as what you experience on the extranet or other services as well. So it's a really try and look at the full marketplace and try and make it a positive experience for everyone.
Great. Serdar.
I am a Senior Director of Product Management at Booking.com. I have a new role. I'm responsible for our partner-facing capabilities, which could be extranet, Pulse, connectivity APIs. The goal is to make sure that our partners have a really great experience working with us, and also our customers having the right availability and rates.
That's great. You heard it all here, folks. If you have any questions about all of those products and tools, he's your guy. So, to dive in first, how do we collect all of this data, and how do we gather these insights from consumers and from travelers?
Yeah, so we do look at general behavior on the site, right? But it can be quite hard to understand what people are doing, why they're clicking on things. So the research team does a wide range of qualitative and quantitative types of research to put the why behind what is happening, both on our internal products and our external pieces. So really tell that full story.
And what does that look like when you talk about sort of doing those more qualitative studies? What does that look like?
Well, pre-pandemic, we did a lot of field visits. We would come and see partners. We would try and understand follow-alongs and things like that. But since then, it's been a lot more surveys, a lot more remote things. And we remote in terms of over Zoom, which we've all done a lot of. And then we pull those insights together and we pass them to product teams and partner with them on finding solutions.
Great. And that leads me to my next question. So, with all of this data, all this research, all of these insights, Serdar, how does your team take that and make it actionable from a product perspective?
Great question. As Molly mentioned, we work collaboratively. It's actually not very serially. It's quite parallel.
Yeah.
It happens in a very collaborative manner where many of our team members constantly interact with each other, but ultimately it comes down to customer and partner needs. And in the last couple of years, and we're going to talk about it quite a bit today, the customer needs have changed quite a bit, so we had to listen to them very carefully. It ultimately becomes a matter of prioritization, and we wanted to make sure that we are addressing the most important problems. That really tends to be the key thing that we want to do. But we are ultimately a marketplace. We want to make sure we are driving the best match of properties to customer needs. So we work on all the way from our search experience down to property pages, down to booking experience, to make sure that we are listening to our customers and changing. It may not always be UI UX. It could be our data models, which allows us to present our customers different options. But that has been what kept us busy in the last couple of years. In 2020 and 2021, we have seen much of our actually customer experience change, and that's in great part due to what we have heard through our research.
That is super interesting that we are so flexible and agile and taking that input and then figuring out how can we adjust our platform and the experience to meet those changing needs. Which then leads us to the meat of what we're going to talk about today, which is these needs and wants of travelers. How have these been changing, Molly?
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing that our customer needs are stable. Well, the changes that came in 2020, summer 2020 and 2021 are kind of stabilizing, and I'm sure that a lot of you are also experiencing this, and that the uncertainty and the huge variation that we saw early on in the different waves is settling. And what we see is that I think through a lot of the work that your team has done, we've seen search patterns change and a lot of variety of the things that folks are looking for. Customer needs are actually fairly stable, right? And what we see is that the urgency or importance of that need is what changes, right? So customers always wanted cleanliness and hygiene was an important question that they had about where they stayed, but the urgency and how important it was to their decision making became absolutely paramount. And I think we'll see similar things with sustainability and other types of needs as they grow over time as well.
It's super interesting. So in essence, the needs and wants are in some ways consistent. It's just depending on what's going on. Is there a global pandemic? All of a sudden, what was sort of like, yeah, cleanliness is important. It's like, no, cleanliness is the most important thing. That's all I care about. Super interesting. Do you see any variance between different parts of the world, or even like, say, for example, in the US? Are there regional variances, perhaps, and maybe in some of these levels of urgency with different needs and wants?
Yeah, I guess one that's relevant in the U.S. is that we definitely see places that folks are doing more road trips and driving, then needs about the questions people might have about how to get from place to place, whether, the logistics of parking, all of those things. It really changes what their kind of information they're looking for on the site. And so, if we have more domestic travel, we have a very different kind of getting from place to place question that folks have.
Absolutely, and to just add to Molly's points, this is an evolving paradigm for us. I mean, COVID is still an ongoing challenge for the world. When the pandemic hit in 2020, suddenly the question was more about, can I actually travel? And very often it was about really necessary travel. And the demand was low, but also the scrutiny around requirements, understanding requirements, even crossing state borders in the US. Obviously, in places like Europe, it's a lot more complicated because you're crossing international borders. So there was a lot of questions about what do I need to be able to travel? And also, how do I stay safe? And there were two elements to that. And literally, 1 out of 2 customers really brought this up with us all the time and wanted more information about it. And that was, how do I understand the hygiene practices at the property or at the location that I'm going to? 45% of the customers literally started telling us in their queries about that. And then the second one is, can I get in and can I get back? The most importantly, can I get back? What kind of requirements do I need to meet to be able to get back? These are the things that are new, But I'll be also very upfront. The requirements around pricing, the review scores, the location of the property, they didn't change. I would say the game or the ante was upped a bit. And we need to listen to that, and we need to provide that kind of information on our property, on our portal.
It's super interesting. So just going back a little bit, when you talked about these sort of two primary needs when it comes to safety. One's about cleanliness, one's about can I get in and out? How did we address that as a platform? How did we sort of meet that need?
Yeah, we have now on our platform I guess a travel center you can call it, a number of tools that allows our consumers, our guests, to be able to understand their source country and their destination country and what the requirements are to be able to travel there. So we do that. We also have worked with our property partners quite a bit. We collected cleanliness information. I think almost 80% of our partners participated in that, and the others already either had some information on our portal about the practices they have, so that we could up-level those things and we could present those things to our customers. It is really just like any other program that we run with our partners. We went to our partners, asked for information, and we collected that information. And on the front end of things, it's quite interesting because we changed the order and the placement of content on both search results and on our property pages. So for those customers who are interested in it, we obviously made it more front and center.
Yeah, absolutely. Stick with you for a second, Serdar, in talking about some of these, what we call foundational needs that travelers have. We've talked a little bit about flexibility and this idea of flexibility. Can you talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in terms of flexibility? Because I think probably we hear that and we think, oh, this means customers really want to be able to cancel their bookings and have ultimate flexibility. But that's maybe not what we're seeing.
No, well, yes and no. So
Yes and no.
let me take a step back. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we have seen a gradual recovery after that. And during that time frame, in addition to cleanliness, a lot of the customers were asking for like refundable and cancelable bookings. And we went and we sourced a lot of those. That was obviously the peace of mind element of the booking experience. But I would say, starting in 2021 and now, recovery turned into a new normal. We're getting back to a new normal. I think yesterday, Glenn mentioned, we are seeing travel demand at the levels of 2019, and in cases actually in a lot of places in the world, we are seeing above that. And also we are seeing summer looking to be pretty good. I think people are obviously still looking for some peace of mind in terms of cancellation flexibility, but most of the time, that flexibility thinking shifted into three additional elements of flexibility. One is people are more open to new destinations. They are mixing work and obviously vacation also, so which means they are able to work remotely. Many people, not everybody, but a lot of people can. So they would like to be able to stay in places with with longer length of stays, and that gives them a little bit of a different perspective as to what destinations, what types of properties. And that's number one. The number two is the dates. People are also quite more flexible in terms of when they can start their holidays and when they can end their holidays. So they're looking for us to be able to provide, obviously, options and alternatives. And then the last thing is their preferences and types of properties they stay at. That also have quite changed in terms of the filters they pick, or do they want to stay at a vacation rental, or do they want to stay at a B&B or a hotel? There's a lot more, I think, interchangeability depending on the requirements that the property meets. So those three types of flexibility is what we are seeing.
And the things you're talking about, we can really validate the why behind that. We see that folks, beyond these foundational needs about the things we mentioned and flexibility leading into that, is because customers are really looking for, beyond a travel with their family, there's also a broader look for kind of wellness trips, disconnecting, getting back to nature, any of these opportunities that they have to really enjoy being out of their homes and out of their areas where a lot of people were fairly stuck. I think we saw this, immediately after the first set of lockdowns in summer 2020, when there were just these huge variations. So I grew up in Moab, Utah, in southern Utah, and I have a lot of friends who work in the tourism industry down there. And everything was locked down, and then people came in, and it was completely overwhelmed, and they couldn't hire people, and the hotels were suffering. And then they locked down again, and it was just, but people were just like, I have to get out, and they would go to the national parks, and they'd be looking for wellness, and it was just huge variations. So, people are looking for longer trips with a wellness element or a disconnection element and nature, and I think I would ask each of you to reflect as you have folks coming in to think about, some of the categories or behaviors those folks are doing as well, because I'm sure you're seeing some interesting patterns.
If I may add,
Yeah.
we have a little area over there about flexible search, and I think it was talked about if you join. But in addition to the lifestyle that people are looking for in their getaways, it really is changing how we need to respond to customer searching for those holidays. In Netherlands, that's where we are from, the most common search word was Amsterdam. Now it became the Netherlands. In the US, it became Poconos instead of Pennsylvania, for example, or Pittsburgh cities, or Philadelphia. So we have to really now think about the journey of the customer quite differently. Where do they start? Where do they get into our funnel? And how do they really discover? How do we inspire them to find the right property for them has changed quite a bit, because in the past, the typical journey of a customer at Booking.com would be, we call high intent customers, would be someone who knew where they were going, when they were going. And they would either type the city or the location or the landmark, and we would just get them through the experience. Now people are saying, show me something on the Oregon coast. Okay, that is a very long coastline. How do we really understand what they are looking for? So intent identification has become very important. So we are spending a lot of energy and investment into machine learning, AI capabilities, to understand based on that session as well as the history of the customer if they are logged in, to be able to get them through that experience so we give them what they want. Are they looking for a standalone property with a pool, or are they looking for a nice hotel with a lot of amenities, gym and pool and spa? We need to understand that so that we can also match where they want to go, what type of a lifestyle they want, and basically correlate all of them into one and be able to give them new choices. So that's what we are doing quite a bit.
And I think we've seen pretty good responses for the adjustments we made during the pandemic, right? So definitely on digital. As we've seen the big adoption of digital during the pandemic, the response in the app has been very strong.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Just to go back, because I think, just so people don't miss this, but this idea that there's been this shift in consumer behavior on our platform where people used to say, I know exactly where I'm going, I know exactly the dates I want to go, and I'm very specific about that. Shifting to, maybe help me discover something. It's a bit more vague. How can our partners in the audience make use of that? Like, what can they do to help us connect them with the customers that want to find their property? Is there something different or new they can be doing?
Well, I think we need to be collaborating even more. So we are working on capabilities to give more insights about where customers are going and what they're looking for. And I think we do want to, across this year especially, get some of these products even further out to our partners. So we give them insights so that they understand where demand is going and what type of capabilities or features or amenities or attributes customers are after. To me, I think as I said, the bar is higher in terms of capturing customers. The advantage, however, that the current market is the demand is quite high compared to what we expected or what we experienced last year. But, and also people are interested in more destinations than before. In the past, it was very common that people enjoyed cities more. Now we have to kind of cast the net wider to make sure that especially properties in alternate destinations can also get demand, and they can. And I think that's another thing that we want to do together to make sure that especially our partners here who have multiple properties, especially in places that used to have less demand in the past, how do we drive more demand to those places is something that we also want to work on together.
I think it's interesting to talk about that a bit more, and maybe Molly, you have something to add on that. This idea that something that was probably fairly functional during large parts of the pandemic, which was travelers choosing to take trips a little bit closer to home, to sort of explore, like, okay, I'm not going to go to Europe this year, I'm not going to go to the Caribbean, but where can I go to the beach nearby, or where can I, have a slightly different experience, a couple of states away?
Yeah.
How is that? How is that evolving now? Is that something that we think maybe might stay? It's sort of like, ooh, I discovered there's lots of stuff around me. Like, how is that
Yeah.
evolving?
Yeah, it's a little hard to put an exact number on it, but I think we are seeing that more people are open to weekend getaways that are a little more regional, right? Or things that are a little more spur of the moment. Now that they kind of know that they can explore in their home area, or that they can get a temporary car and drive out of the city if they don't own a car, like they know how to do that now, or they've figured that out while they were gone, and we're seeing some signs that that's kind of a persistent consumer behavior that may be changing.
That's super interesting. So it's something that sort of developed, like, this is all I could do,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
actually I kind of like it.
Yeah.
How do we think that will play out in terms of going back to old patterns, in terms of destinations? Do we have any initial insights into that?
Well, I mean, there is definitely some, I would say, temperament of the trends that started, right? To throw a couple of stats out there, stats are good always. We went from a 55-45 split of domestic and international travel to 80-20. It's not staying at 80-20, it's going down a bit because the borders are opening up, but I think for a while people feel a lot more comfortable with the country they live in or the surroundings of that. So I think it will remain for a while. We are not seeing an immediate going back to normal, although, for example, Europe is open for business right now. What we still see in the US, people feeling a little bit hesitant to travel across the pond. And we see obviously travel opening up the Caribbean quite a bit, and also in the US. So we do believe that that trend will moderate a bit from 80-20 to a lower number, but it will not go back to 55-45, I think, anytime soon. So that does create quite a bottleneck with availability in high season for states or countries or destinations. For example, during spring break time, which is happening right now, we're seeing tremendous bottlenecks, and you probably are seeing it very closely in availability. So what we would like to be able to do is, how do we work together with as I mentioned, it's about flexibility around destination dates and types or preferences of properties. We want to make sure, because there are a lot of properties on our platform, but for certain dates and destinations, it tends to be quite constrained. So how do we take advantage, I would say, of this flexibility that's happening to give people options, maybe just a nearby town, the next town, which has very similar things to offer, but maybe not the brand or of the other city that the person is looking for. So we are working on that, and we need to keep doing that. I think we are maybe halfway in that journey. I think it is. We are a very experimentation-driven company, as you know. We are working quite a bit about definition of cities or locations. We are working quite a bit about playing around with customers' preferred filters and sorters, and how do we really, in a transparent way to customers, to really flex these so that they can actually find availability during those dates. But it still is a challenge. And a part of it is we also want from our partners insights and help so that we can present their properties with the best labels or capabilities and attributes so we can match them to the right guests. For example, people might be looking for an area, and they may find a property, but their property may not be a good fit for them because the rooms they have is not good for a family. Or they're looking for staying in the property and spending a lot of time, and amenities in that property maybe is not that rich. So how do we really make sure that we understand from our partners, not just from the reviews, that our customers are telling us what the property is good for, but we also want to hear from the partners to be able to make sure that we're presenting the best out of them and match them to what people are looking for. So there's a lot of, I think, gems there, and our experimentation methodology and data-driven product development approach gives us a very good compass, frankly, to see if we are actually increasing conversion and driving more traffic to properties who are doing this work and working with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And something you were talking about there, we've done a lot of talking about people discovering sort of different destinations, exploring closer to home. But then you also mentioned that like borders are opening in other countries. And the US is a very popular destination as a country with people from all over the world. Are we seeing that demand coming back of people saying, I'm really excited to get back to exploring the US again? And are we seeing maybe anything different or similar with some of the trends we're seeing with US travelers? Maybe Molly or Siddharth?
We are seeing a increased demand towards US, but it's obviously it's cautious because there's still some testing requiremements. I think this is a completely personal take because we've seen that happen in Europe quite a bit. As soon as countries drops their testing requirements for travelers who have been vaccinated, the demand goes up quite a bit. And I think we are, possibly going to see that. I mean, fingers crossed. We don't really know how pandemic is going to obviously progress, but Omicron, the way it's looking like, that may happen. So I think we are going to see an increased demand for summer. That's the prediction, obviously.
Cool.
We'll have to see if it
And
happens.
Molly, do we think maybe some non-US travelers are also sort of following some of these same trends? I mean, can we expect to see travelers from Thailand discovering some of these second and third cities in the US? Or are they still attracted to the big hotspots? Is it Vegas and Orlando and New York?
Well, we are seeing...
And Nashville, of course.
And Nashville, of course, yes. Well, we definitely are seeing a lot of overall pent-up demand, and so that will spread itself for the big cities. But also, I think people are discovering smaller locations and hearing from their friends about other trips that they've taken. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves over time. I think that one of the things that we see is that there are really 7 key decisions that customers make when they're looking to book a trip. So they look at where to go, when to go, who to go with, how to travel there, and then the very important things while they're there of where to stay, where to sleep, very essential, or not sleep, put your stuff while you're out on the town in Nashville.
Yeah.
What to eat and what to do, right? And those things as a group are the things that can make or break a choice that someone makes, right? Is this near a national park because I'm looking for a hiking trip? Is this a place where I can easily rent a car because I need to be able to travel in the area? Do I have to go on these dates because it's only dates when my kids are out of school, right? And so some of those decisions are anchor points. And we can move them, but if they're anchored completely, we can't, right? We don't have a lot of influence on it. So that's very consistent globally, and then the importance or urgency of that decision then varies as well.
I think that's super interesting. And I'm also wondering, and I'll ask this first before I ask my other personal question about it, because I love traveling for food. But do we ever see different behavior from the same traveler? So say, for example, on one type of trip, they may be hyper-focused on, okay, I'm traveling with my family, it has to be this specific time. But maybe they also have like a weekend trip with their partner, or they go on a holiday with their group of friends, or that they travel alone for business.
Absolutely. I know in one of the earlier panels they were talking about customers and Genius customers in particular. We see for them they might have very different behaviors and intents per trip type. So the same person will do a very different business trip than they would if they were going on a romantic getaway, right? But we need to be able to understand what's important to them in that context for what they're trying to accomplish. So
Super interesting. And this is leading me to a new question to you, Sridhar. I have not posed to you before. But I know that we do a lot of machine learning and personalization. And we understand a lot about what travelers have picked in the past, what they prefer in the past. How do we make sense of these travelers that take different kinds of trips and have different kinds of preferences?
It's difficult, right? Your past trip may not be a representative of your next trip because people take trips with different purposes. But there are trends, commonalities. There's a couple things we do. We are very much investing in some happy meeting there. Our mobile experience. We are seeing many of our customers now using the mobile app more and more, which, by the way, when you're using the mobile app, you're logged in very often. When you're logged in, we can give you actually much more targeted recommendations. Basically, during the pandemic, the mix of mobile app usage went up 20% in favor of the mobile app. So we are seeing, of course, excuse me, the desktop is very relevant. There's a lot of volume, but we are seeing a lot of users who actually have told us where they are, who they are, what they have booked before, and what filters and what choices they have made before, what properties they viewed, what properties they did not view, what pictures or photos they looked at, what amenities they cared about. We are very much following in the benefit of the customer what they do, and we try to inform our next, opportunity to present them properties based on those learnings. In addition to that, we are also experimenting with things like how do we really respect customers' choices, but we give them the right alternate options, whether it is relaxing of some of these filters. You know, somebody might be looking for arbitrarily 8.5 review score. Would 8.4 would be a deal breaker? Depends on the user, probably not. Because if we cannot find properties that met all the other checkboxes, we want to be able to give that to them. So we are experimenting quite a bit with users' choices as well. And then also the dates and destinations have become a very interesting opportunity for us. These days, we are, I'm sure you're seeing it in our application as well, when the exact dates don't match, we try to give, based on our understanding of the customer, a day before, a day later, a bunch of options to really make sure we get what they want. And as they engage with the platform, as we see how they navigate, we learn what works, what doesn't work.
It's super interesting because I will say, actually, as a customer, I've experienced that myself. I found like an amazing property. Ooh, I really want to stay there. Oh, but the dates don't quite work. And I've actually seen that. Actually, if you move your trip 4 days, this property is available. And I've done that before, and I'm like, oh, thankfully for this trip that was possible. So that's a really interesting example of the way that we're sort of removing that friction point for customers. I do want to make time for some questions, but real quickly before we do that, Molly, I want to go back to some of these sort of more aspirational sort of needs and wants of travelers. How are we looking at sort of surfacing those in the user experience to sort of match those with different types of properties? Is there any color you can give to that?
Well, we definitely saw an increase in searches for things like nature or, you know, national parks and things like that. So anytime we can, now we're seeing if the review has more of that kind of information in it, then we can surface properties that have that. So it's kind of a natural positive cycle, right? More information from the partners, more information from reviews, and then people see that there is nearby nature or some way for them to get out and not be in the city.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to questions that have come in from the audience. How do you see our transfers offer and proposal versus other solutions such as Uber and Lyft?
No, we can.
It's a tricky conversation.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I think the transportation, you know, is, I think from a transfers proposal, basically the opportunity to transfer you between wherever you land or are, between that and the property. It's an opportunity to provide them with one less friction point for another place to switch, right? Uber, in a new place, you don't know where to go, you don't know who to contact, it can be super challenging. And so it's one more opportunity to kind of help them work with a brand that they trust and offer them only, you know, as Serdar said, one app to look in to get the information, and you know, for them to feel like they're simplifying, for lack of a better term.
If I may add, there's a little bit of an also add to or relationship to the trends after COVID as well, which is people are looking for frictionless, touchless digital experiences a lot more. Mobile use went up. We are seeing a lot of customers asking for more streamlined check-in experiences, for example, at their properties. But they are also looking for the in-trip experience being connected. We do believe there's a lot of opportunity with transportation and rides, and we are trying different options in different markets. It doesn't have to be, when you go to Amsterdam, the options could be different than Vienna. In some cases, we actually are connecting to public transport. In some cases, we are connecting to taxi services or ride-hailing services. It's very important, however, that it's the job that the customer wants us to do what matters here. As Molly mentioned, we believe it's already here. It's not the future. People want us to offer them the connected trip. However, the connected trip doesn't have to be capabilities from Booking.com alone. Connected Trip has dependency on third-party services, also our services from our partners as well. We are very interested in figuring out how to take services and capabilities of our partners and bringing them to surface for them. I mean, we do not want to build our own rigid check-in service, for example. We are integrating with our partners' check-in services. Or we want to bring partners' capabilities, whether it's upselling to breakfast or a higher room or activities at their property, whatever they can be. We want to be able to place them on the marketplace so that customers who need them, because we understand their intent more and more, we can give it to them and they can book it all in one place. And so they don't have to worry about navigating when they're traveling, which can be very stressful.
All clear. I mean, we got a little bit far away from Uber, but
yes,
it's clear. There's opportunity there,
yes,
and we see that it's making things easier, more simple for consumers. Sardar, this is a question for you. You mentioned Booking.com changed the order of content online based on travelers' interests. Was this custom and responsive per user based on their behavior via the app and online, or was this something the site changed based on more macro overall trends?
It is more something in the middle. We try to figure out themes, and we have cohorts, if you will, or segments of customers. We try to present them the content in a scalable way to such cohorts. For example, people are looking for beach travel with certain type of activities involved. They may see some of the amenities or attributes of both the property and the location in a different place than those who are not, who are going to just to experience the city or doing a business trip. So we want to do it in a scalable way. It doesn't happen at an individual user level, but it does happen at segments level.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we look at some initial data points that say, aha,
patterns.
This is a certain type of group of travelers.
Yes.
We suspect that this may be a better way to organize the information for them. Cool. Molly, maybe I'll lob this one over to you. With all of the data points and preferences of these guests, could we eventually do custom campaigns through Booking.com to target specific guests? For example, foodies, or golfers, or beach families, for example.
Yeah. I absolutely think that's a great opportunity for us to provide more ways to connect with our customers, and potentially in the future offer them special services or things when they get to the site. We need partnership to be able to find ways to surface that to guests, and then also to be sure that they'll get that experience on the other end when they put that in. If I put in that I'm looking for a disconnection retreat, making sure that that's clear when I get to the site. So I think it's a nice partnership for us to do more of that.
If I may add to that, to Molly's point, so we have I've worked with those teams in my previous role at Booking. We have an organization who's focused on those trip types or themes. They have obviously focused on beach, ski, like large themes of travel first. They've been working on sustainability, which is being talked about quite a bit here. And nature trips is the next one, but the intent is to be able to do these aspirational trip intent related end-to-end journeys over time. So the answer is yes. It is a matter of prioritization. We do use a lot of machine learning to understand from customers what the destination or property is good for. We label it, we show it to customers, but we also want that information coming from our partners as well. So absolutely, I mean, it's a matter of time, however. Right. It has to be prioritized and be done in some sequence.
Yeah, but some very nice opportunities there.
There is, yes.
I'm going to try and get to at least one more question. Is there data that shows what are the top filters used by domestic travelers? Do we have some insights that we can share there? Maybe Sardar or Molly?
Yes, we do. So there's a couple things. There are filters that never change. Our customers are using more and more filters. Like 45% of customers have at least one filter turned on. There's the usual ones. Obviously, we have a price toggle now. Price is very, very important. Review score is a very common one. People pick, that doesn't change. And then when you go into segments of users, depending on their travel intent, we start, especially during summer, we start seeing a lot of pool. We start a lot of, depends on the destination. We see a lot of spa. It really depends on the users. There's some Uber ones, I would say, and then there's the more trip intent or personal intent related ones. But we definitely track them. And I think it's one of those things that we want to be able to share more with you. In those destinations where your properties are, for example, what people are looking for, I think that would be something that we can work together on as part of insights that we want to provide more and more to.
Super. And I think that could be very valuable for our partners, understanding what are customers filtering on the most and making sure that they can show up for those different types of trips and intents. Well, I am sad to say that is all the time we have, but thank you both for sharing your time and expertise with us. And thank you all for being such a great audience and for submitting such great questions. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Click. And if you have any more questions, you know where to find us. We'll be around.